Hey, what's up, Liron here. In this episode of Painting Masters, we'll review works by Paul Talbot-Greaves, an English watercolor painter who lives in Halifax, around the Pennine Mountains, I believe it's called, Pennine Hills area, and the reason I mentioned this is one of the things that you will see in a lot of his work is the countryside, is nature, and he says he aspires to convey that ruggedness of nature and the chaotic, I think that's what he meant as well, the chaotic nature of light and shadow and its interaction with the environment. And as you'll see, you'll soon understand why I love his works. He has a lot of strong and punchy contrasts. He is not afraid to push it to go really, really dark when necessary, and his compositions and the organization of different elements is great, and it's very unique. I haven't seen quite a lot of people who have that particular approach. But in any case, let's get started, look at some of his works up close. So we'll get started, and as always, I'm going to start with my personal favorite, which is this one, because it's a combination of all of the things that make me really love his paintings. Just rearranging the mic so I can see the paintings properly. But in any case, this is a combination of everything I love about his art, the types of landscapes he works on, the stone walls and fences. I love these so much. The strong contrasts, not being afraid to push the shadows to their limit and doing it in a very good way and in a very calculated manner, so not necessarily darkening the whole thing up, but rather selected places. I think he is a master of portraying these types of stones and rocks. That's one thing I really appreciate about his paintings, and also the overall color selection, which isn't as obvious as you'll see soon. It's very different from many of the things I show you. So here's another one, a very typical type of painting you'd see by him. It's very interesting to see how every artist has their signature, and for him, signature brush marks, I would say. And for him, it's three things that I can really see here is the way he uses dry brush on the left, then these thinner lines that are very watery, so they splatter paint all over, which I love, and also these splatters here. These are things you'll see in many of his works, as far as I've seen at least. Probably I'm not familiar with everything, obviously, but just beautiful. Now, another thing is, again, directing the viewer's attention. Notice how this part of the fence is very loose and blended, but then the more you go into the distance, you do get some more definition on these rocks. Now, the things that are closer to us will usually be clearer, be more detailed, but there is something to be said about directing the viewer's attention to some kind of a depth within the painting. And so if you don't want the focus to be here, but rather here in the mid distance, then it can be a good idea to blur what's close to us and actually keep the things in the center sharp, which is something I used to do sometimes, and I haven't done in a long time. I should try and do more of that. Because I really enjoy it. Here's the one that's fairly different from most of the others, really focusing in on these sheep. You don't see a lot of these. I'll show you some others and you'll slowly realize I did want to include that. And by the way, I didn't mention, but two things. One, he has a YouTube channel that I highly recommend you check out, so I will link it down below. And second, he also works in acrylics. He also says it on his website, uses both watercolor and acrylics, and sometimes mixes them. But I think watercolor is his main medium. Here's another one. You can really see these wet brush marks, very free and loose. This thing, I really want to just take a moment and look at it and have you look at it too, because it's just beautiful. The colors aren't as obvious. You get some of these phthalo blues. Here you can really tell. See this spot? Let's zoom in. You can really see the phthalo-ness of it. Just a lot of color combinations that aren't as obvious. I think he uses the cooler yellows as well, more lemon yellow, which I don't use as often because I recognize it here, and I actually like it in the context of his paintings. And this contrast of softer and wet and then dry and rough, like you see on the trees here. Some scratches too, probably, to get these details of the branches. Lovely compositions too. You see no gap here is the same distance and same width. Just a lot of beautiful things going on. Now, I did want to show you some acrylics, and he also dilutes them with water. He tends to do that, at least from what I've seen. So these boats, and the next one is really one that I love. This one is really, really nice. So let's take a moment to appreciate it, and then we'll move on to some more watercolors. And again, these fences and the shadows they cast of the countryside, just beautiful, beautiful works. A lot of random brush marks, and I have seen that he's not afraid to really go crazy in those areas that are a little looser and a little more vegetation and foliage. He's not scared of doing that, and I think that's really important. If you look, he works also in good sizes, not too small, which also benefits the movement of the wrist. You can go and do a lot of dry brush strokes and get nice marks going. Notice the water puddles here, just so well made. Could be with acrylics on top of watercolor, I don't know. But just beautiful. I don't think this is fully acrylics because there are some backgrounds that characterize watercolor. However, I could be mistaken. This could be more acrylics based. Here's a beautiful snowy one. I love the texture of the paper here, really visible. And again, a lot of blurriness in some spots, then sharpness in others. I tend to like more the strong sunlit scenes, but there is something to snow scenes that I really connect with because we don't have it here. We don't barely have any snow, so I always love seeing snow. And again, these gentle brush marks here for some bushes coming out of the snow, and then a shadow casting, or a couple of cows here. A very nice atmospheric thing here going on with the sense of just the cold and the sense of place. Very, very good. I really love this one. Here's another typical one that I love. And you can see the opening here of the wall, and then you can see it reflected in the shadow. Notice how he's not afraid on the one hand to push things to be rather dark, but also he's not making things black with no purpose. So this, you can actually see the details within the shadow, so he doesn't flatten it. And I think that looks really good. Notice how this shadow looks so much darker than the road, but it's just a mid value. It's not even that dark. This green here is much darker than this. So I love that kind of a thing. And the splatters, really nice combination of splatters and then blurry areas that are kind of alive with all sorts of effects and charging with water and maybe even lifting in some places. Notice this gap here in the fence and how the light just spills in. He's really a master of composition and making things work really well together. Here's another one I really love, a combination of snow and strong sunlight. Like, what more could I ask for? And that blue on the snow is so pretty. You get a lot of backgrounds from some areas. Probably many of them are calculated and meant to be there. Maybe some of them aren't. I love this reddish green, the brown, green, orange, I don't know what you'd call it. Beautiful colors, really. And a very good way of directing our eyes and allowing them to rest on, like, I never feel tired when looking at his work because I always know I want to focus on this spot, then I want to focus on that spot. The eyes have a nice little combination of areas to rest and then areas to stay on and look at the amount of detail. So really clever there. Here's another one I really love. Again, a master of composition and making this, like, look at the sky and how little of a role it plays here as a landscape. So the smart way of cropping this view with the mountainside or the hillside, and then within that, because it's dark, you want to get some interest. So he has this lovely fence going and that contrasts sharply with the shadows behind it. The cows have a touch of phthalo in them, like just blue, that you would never guess you should do. Really one of my favorites here. These greens, strong, saturated. And notice how much the fact that he mutes some of the areas of color helps with the saturation of some of the other areas. So most of this is fairly muted, but you do get some saturated areas like here on the left, and probably around this section as well. But then it really falls into balance with the rest of the painting that's fairly muted. Let's see what else we have here. Here's another beautiful one with some snow and mountains in the background. These rocks, again, he's a master of it. I love, love, love how he portrays these rocks. And here, just a big mess. I don't care. You don't even know what's there. And one thing that I would say about this one is very clever plays of warms and cools. Notice how this blue and brown really stick together. They're one next to the other, which really pulls our view here. Despite all the details in the stone wall and the house here, you still are attracted also to this intersection of blue and orange. They look just beautiful. Not to talk about this blue and orange. So just a lot of things going on, and all of them are great. Here's another one of my favorites, especially because of the way he got these stones in here. And if we zoom out a bit, it will read even better. You see, it's just kind of bricks laid to the side. It looks like a barbed wire or a very gentle fence that with the stone wall works really well and just looks so good. And I love the fact that he puts the buildings and the things that most people focus on, he puts them in the far distance and chooses to focus on these types of fences. Just beautiful. Really, really nice. I would never have thought that this particular subject will fascinate me as much as by seeing his works. And this is one of my favorites as well here. Purely because of the color selection. It's a very typical color selection for some of my works, with the yellow that is similar to, I would say, New Gamboge, and then with a bit of a warmer orangey red, a sap green feeling to it, a bit of the violet. Just beautiful secondary color palette with this one that I think works really well. And all of these small areas of the backgrounds and the cauliflowers, and then the thick paint that hasn't really spread out, and the splatters, these all just add so much more richness to it. And again, these stones, beautiful, beautiful. Look at these up close. You can really tell their shape. And I love how there's a wash under them that's kind of blended and merged together. This one is so clever, because with this I wanted to show you how simplicity doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to execute, and the result can be simple but very complex. If you painted, if you ever try to paint strong contrasts, shadows cast by trees, it can be challenging to get them to work together and not become a big mess, and then take it one step further and actually change their shape in a way that will be interesting, which is exactly what he did here. The shadows aren't necessarily what was truly there, if you ask me. I don't know. I think he took a lot of liberties, though this could be shadows cast from the right, but I interpreted them as the light coming somewhat in front of us. And I think he took some liberties with the shadows. He must have, I think. And look at them. This is such a clever shape. And it's all merged. There are barely any hard shadows between the shapes between the shadows. You don't see any hard cuts between them, which makes it just beautiful. And then some dry brush to get some of the leafy effect without getting into too many details. The color selection isn't necessarily something I would go for. Again, I hate that lemony yellow, but look at it, works so well together. I think that's lemon yellow. I don't know. And I think this is okay. Well, we're almost done. Another pretty one with the sharp note. This one, he really pushed the shadows far. And there is something to be said about using the medium fully. And I think his works really use watercolor fully, in that there is this very sharp area, and then this very blended, blurry area here, and also here in the back. This takes so much control just to get this little piece of foliage, I don't know, the bush here to spread out, but still read really well with the dark areas around it. Just takes so much skill in planning and reaction to what's happening on paper. Proper reaction, good reaction. Very clever use of some blues and purples. Very gentle purples or lilacs here on the fence. A lot of these oranges and greens that I love. So clever with this one, and then adding all of these small dry brushes into the shadows really break it off in an interesting manner, so it's not just pure black areas, and also it mimics the branches here on the right, so you get essentially a negative, because here it's very dark on light, here it's very light on dark. So just a lot of clever things going on. Wherever you look inside his paintings, any area you'll check out, you will find so much interest going on. Here again, a gap in the fence that spills light onto the road, similar to what we've seen before. With this house, this is so clever. Look at these little chimneys here with the blue shadows on them contrasting with the brown roof. You get a bit of nature, but you also like the farm, and then you get this structure here, very tall structure, but very gentle. Nothing is Nothing is expressed too in your face. It's all very hinted. There's a lot of back and forth between us, the viewer, and the paintings. So you fill in the gaps. You take from it what you will. You see what you want. Is this a mountain ridge in the background? Is it foliage? Who knows? You know, everyone will take it to their direction. And just so much clever things going on. The composition, color selection, edges, a lot of flow and fluidity, great use of dry brush, beautiful portrayal of light and shadow with the rocks, you know, just really, really good, solid art. So I think that's it. After a while of not reviewing watercolors, it's been really nice to go back to my roots a bit and actually talk about watercolors, because I don't have much to say necessarily about other mediums. Here I can really call on the technique and tell on it and figure it out better. So I just think it's better for you and me to sometimes go back to the roots. I hope you enjoyed this one, and with that, let's wrap it up face to face. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I personally really enjoyed the nature of these very nature-oriented paintings. It's something I do want to do more of, being, you know, in the city and painting mostly cityscapes. It's a nice, I think, contrast for me. One other thing I take from this, and by the way, he has a YouTube channel, so you want to check it out, I will link it down below. For sure, it's really worth checking out, is painting larger. I think that's an important ingredient in that too, because when you work larger, on the one hand, you have more challenges to face, and you have to sometimes work a little faster, have larger brushes and so on. But on the other hand, it all expands. It allows you more expression, because you can actually move your hand. You don't have to just, you know, move very gently within a small confined space. You can actually let it go. So that's something that I take from even looking at his demos on YouTube, something I want to do more in any case. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out his work. I will link down below his website, his YouTube channel, and everything. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you still haven't. I have tons of other episodes like this one, and also new upcoming episodes. I will see you again in the next episode and in the next video real soon.